Okay, we're live. Just like that. Welcome back to the shop. Welcome back to DIY guitar making. Today we're going to do Q&As, and I failed to add a question of the week to the private members forum this week. So I will read you one of the earlier ones, which I have a bunch that I never read on the Q&As anyway. So this works out. We're catching up. Question of the week, therefore, is: what aspect of lutherie do you struggle with the most? And, well, I'll answer personally for myself at first. For me, I would say it's, somewhere between finishing or even just finiting, getting the guitar to the point where I can actually take it into the finishing room. That is really hard for me. So what I mean is like little gouges and repairs. I get to this point where I'm so close, everything's sanded smooth, and I'm steaming out dents and stuff like that, and I get to this stage where I feel like I'm creating as many little issues as I'm fixing them, right? It just becomes very hard to create this perfect, precious thing that I can just carry over and apply the finish to. Maybe that's more of a, issue with patience and keeping my space clear and everything like that. Being clean and patient. I'm going to work on that. Let's see, we got Argus Guitars writes, his response to the question of the week is the finishing. Oh, look at that. Okay, so he's on the same page. Says, I've used Danish oil for my first electric and French polished my first acoustic. Good on you, French polish, nice. Both turned out great, but I had to resand and start again on both. Very frustrating. Yeah, that is a common sentiment that I hear, having to resand and just start over. And then LC Guitars writes, I would agree with you on finish. I have resanded about 50% of every finish I have done. I am doing tried and true nitrocellulose on the next acoustic. Nice. Okay, so yeah, looks like everyone agrees. Finishing. It's not surprising, honestly. Finishing truly is an art in and of itself. It's an art separate from woodworking and guitar making. In fact, you're dealing with a whole different medium, dealing with chemicals. There isn't really a lot of transfer or crossover from the things you learn in woodworking. A lot of people, by the way, outsource their finishing. I don't know if you guys out there know that. There are few and far between, and they're getting fewer and further between, but there are people who make it their business to finish guitars for other people. And so if you can afford it, you outsource it to them, and then finishing doesn't even cross your mind. Honestly, it's a good way to go. A lot of the big name builders, boutique guitar makers, do exactly that. It just makes sense. Sometimes the only way to create, not the only way, but sometimes the way to create a really fine finish is to have an entire workspace dedicated to finishing, and that's exactly what these specialized finishers do. Their whole workshop is finishing, so that's what they do. Something to think about. Let's see. Okay, Home Built Workshop. That's Jeff Baker over there at the YouTube channel Home Built Workshop. It's a pretty big channel. He does woodworking. It's more of a general woodworking channel. He also builds electric guitars, and more recently he has started making acoustic guitars. He took my online course. And let's see, so he writes, he's responding to a post about gluing in labels, putting a label on your back. And he writes, I printed my label on linen parchment paper with a laser printer. I then sprayed a coat of shellac over the label. The light amber color in the shellac gave it a tiny bit of an aged look. Once it was dry, I used Titebond Original to glue it to the back plate. So far, so good. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I like giving it that aged look. I've sometimes put boiled linseed oil on the labels for that reason. I bet you your amber shellac probably darkens it up a little bit more, and it probably looks a little bit better that way, so I like that idea. Okay, question about parlor guitars. Patrick writes, my next guitar is going to be a parlor guitar with Crelicam ebony back and sides, lacewood binding. I haven't decided on a top wood yet, maybe Sinker redwood. Has anyone here made a parlor guitar with a deeper body, 4 to 5 inches? What was the effect on tone? More bass, less bass, louder, better or worse harmonics? Is this a terrible idea? It's a lot of questions at the end there, a lot of question marks in his question. So he's asking about increasing the body depth and what that's going to do. I actually just did a video, not on this, but on answering the question of why a cutaway makes your guitar sound brighter, and this actually relates. So there's a concept called the Helmholtz resonance, and what that describes is the relationship between the volume of your soundbox and the size of your sound hole. The relationship between those two things determines the frequency of the sound that it produces. So it'll determine whether you get more high frequency sounds or more low bassy frequency. Okay, sorry about that, guys. My battery died and I had to snatch a new battery. So we're back and up and rolling again. And Helmholtz resonance, I was just describing how the relationship between the size of your air cavity and the size of your sound hole determines whether you get more high frequency sounds or more low frequency sounds. And so when the size of the air cavity increases and the size of your sound hole stays the same, which is what you're describing by increasing the body depth, you're getting more volume out of that box. Sound hole stays the same, so you should get more bass. In fact, you for sure will get more bass than if you didn't do that. Past a certain point, the box becomes inefficient if you make the box too big. I don't know what that point is, but I'm just giving you, in theory, what you can expect from increasing body depth. More bass, and possibly you go too far and it just doesn't project or sustain very well anymore. That's always possible too. But I would try it. I've built, okay, I didn't build, so I completed a guitar that had, was a parlor guitar and had a very deep body. That sounds a little confusing. Completed? What do you mean you didn't build? Somebody else built the body, and I didn't know this person, but it was a guitar maker who sadly passed. And they had, as one of their final guitars that they were working on, he had gotten the Soundbox complete and had just never, made the neck or anything else or finished the whole thing. And so as a gift to his mom, I completed the guitar. So that's what I mean by I didn't really build this. So he built the Soundbox, and for whatever his reasons were, it was very deep. I wish I had taken notes on it or something and could tell you how deep it was. You mentioned 4 to 5 inches. It was probably, yeah, it probably was around 5 inches, honestly. It was very, very deep. And I think it sounded pretty good. This was a long time ago. I don't even think I had a very good ear for telling whether it sounded, for having an opinion on what it sounded like. But it worked. I didn't notice it sounding like it was a very inefficient soundbox. So anyway, that's a long way to say, give it a shot, man. What do you got to lose? I mean, maybe you build a guitar that doesn't sound as good. Just do it anyway. I don't know. That's how I feel. All right, what's the next question? I got to find my phone again. Hold on. I'm all out of sorts here because of that battery incident. And actually, sticking with Patrick's question about parlor guitars, we do have a response here from someone else. Ala Lush writes, I have a 1947 Martin O 18, not exactly a parlor, but close, which has a deeper body than my OM guitar. It sounds very rich and loud, so I think a deeper body can be a good thing, maybe for smaller sized guitars. Okay, well there we go. There's some anecdotal evidence as well. Great, thank you for that, Lush. Let's see. LC Guitars. All right. He's got a lot of progress here. Man, you've been working your butt off, dude. My method for applying a rear headstock veneer. LC Guitars. I wanted to share my method for applying a rear headstock veneer. I almost always do a volute, so I start there, sanding the headstock back to thickness with my spindle sander and a fence, a bit of hand sanding to get it even. Then I cut an MDF clamping caul and sand the same radius as the volute. Cut the veneer to a rough size and apply some wood glue to the back of the headstock. Set the veneer to the glue, a layer of wax paper, a layer of thin foam to take up any imperfections in the caul, and then the caul. Clamp in place and be sure the curved part of the caul is pushed forward into the volute. I let it dry overnight and unclamp. I then trim the veneer close with some scissors. Very careful here not to split it. Then I use a sanding block with some 150 sandpaper to sand the veneer to the shape of the headstock. Make sure you don't sand from the face of the headstock to the rear, or you may lift a splinter of veneer up. All right, he has some really detailed pictures of the process here, so I'm going to include those. That's going to be really helpful. I don't have anything to add there. I haven't made a backplate. What he calls a rear headstock veneer. That works too. And but I like it. Makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that he thicknesses using a fence and his spindle sander in order to get the curve of that volute on the back. That makes a lot of sense. I thickness my headstocks on the table saw because I don't have a volute. So I don't need that little curve there. That's great, but if I ever started doing volutes, that's how I would do it for sure. Spindle sander and a fence. All right, thank you, LC Guitars. Okay, Home Built Workshop again. Jeff Baker. He writes, I use the Mega Flush trim bits from Infinity. They have top and bottom bearings and have compression style blades to help with tear out. So what he's talking about here is this is on a thread about router bits for use on templates or for making molds and jigs. So for a router table, a pattern bit or a flush trim bit. And we had a thread going where a variety of people were giving their recommendations for flush trim router bits and pattern bits. And Jeff says, I use the Mega Flush trim bits from Infinity. They have top and bottom bearings and have compression style blades to help with tear out. They've been working great for me. They come in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch shanks with a few different bit lengths. I use these for almost all of my template routing. Yeah, I don't have any bits with top and bottom bearings, but you know, the more I really think they're the way to go. So the more I hear about them, the more I think I need to get my hands on a. Doesn't matter whether it's these bits that he's talking about or the white side ones that we were talking about in a different Q&A. Top and bottom bearings make a lot of sense. You can do a lot of things that you can't do with just a top bearing. All right, thanks, Jeff. Okay, I think that's good for the members forum, the private members forum, which you get when you purchase either my online course or sign up for a hands-on workshop. That's good for that. Let's go ahead and jump over to YouTube and answer some of your comments there. All right, Scara60 writes, very nice, Eric. I really like your bridge design on that parlor guitar. Thank you, man. I'm building my 4th parlor guitar, and the one thing I struggled with was the bridge design and size. I made pyramid style bridges for the last 3, but this one I wanted to make a belly type bridge. I might steal your design, thanks. You can absolutely steal my design. I am only flattered by you stealing my design. Where do you buy the Evo Gold fret wire from? Exactly what you showed in the video, all one piece and pre-radiused. Also, well, let me stop there. Let me answer that question. I get it from LMI. So this is a wire that's made by a company called Jescar, but LMI distributes this. Other companies do too as well, I'm sure. I get it from LMI. They have it in 100-foot sections or in 4-foot sections. If you're just doing one guitar, you get a 4-foot section. If you're stocking up, you get 100 feet. And it comes pre-radiused. I think they also have it unradiused as well in just straight sections. But this stuff doesn't bend easy, so that's why the pre-radiused coil exists. And you can get that from, once again, LMI, Luthier's Mercantile International. DALG Guitars writes, another thing to try and help bridge pin hole split. I saw a video where the luthier always makes his bridge plate with the grain on an angle, just so it's less likely to split. Sounded like a good idea to me. He goes by the name The Pragmatic Luthier on YouTube. Okay, I haven't heard of him. But yes, I do that too, angling the grain so that the ball point of every string rests on not just a single grain line. That's the real problem, but it rests on multiple grain lines at once. In fact, if you buy your bridge plates from Stu Mac, your bridge plate material, that's what you're buying. You're buying skew cut maple. It's cut at an angle to ensure that your bridge pin or the ball ends of your strings aren't resting on just one point of weakness. But thank you for that. He also writes, totally looking forward to the Wengi guitar build to continue. I love the wood, but it can be a little difficult to work with. Yeah, certainly hard to get the grain filled. I actually really like the shape and all the bevels of that bridge. Really nice looking. As always, thanks for the videos. Well, thank you, DALG. Appreciate that. Yeah, Wengi has huge pores. Takes forever to fill. I'm actually not even going to fill these pores because I actually kind of like the look of open pores. Not always, but often. And especially on something with huge pores, it's kind of cool just to leave them unfilled. Or maybe that's just me being lazy and not wanting to fill the pores. Maybe it's an excuse. I don't know. The other thing, too, about it being difficult to work is it's very splintery. You get a lot, if you're not ready for it, you get a lot of little splinters in your fingers, and those are annoying. Walter Ryder writes, thank you, Eric. If you do not mind, a suggestion on using transfer punches. Light taps, as we do not want to wear them out. Light taps to mark, then take a regular punch to the light taps and smack the heck out of it. That will keep that from happening again. Let me see if I can understand that. So in the video I did, I had tapped out my bridge pin holes, and one of my holes I drilled off accidentally. I screwed up. Although I don't think it was the point that he's talking about at the point where I was setting the holes. I think I correctly tapped out my holes, the hole locations, and then when I went to drill them, instead of aligning the brad point of the bit on my drill press with the mark that it was supposed to go in, I ended up in an adjacent pore because, like I was just saying, Wengi has huge pores. And I say I think that because I looked at the bridge before I went over to the drill press and everything looked fine. I didn't notice one of the marks being as far off as it ended up being. But let me go on with what he's saying, because he still might have a good point here on using transfer punches, light taps. Yeah, so yeah, I might have been whacking on the transfer punch a little too hard, so I might be wearing... Wengi's not a super dense wood, but I might be, it might not be good for the transfer punch. We're going to take a regular punch to the light taps and smack the heck out of it. That will keep that from happening again. Wengi is porous, So now he's asking a question. Wangi is porous. Will you pour fill it? I already answered that, actually. No, I won't. A question, please. How did the bridge and fingerboard work out using the Cataloche? Wow, that is an old question. So Walter Ryder, I know, has been following my videos almost from the beginning, which is awesome. And Cataloche, I used some Cataloche on a couple guitars a long time ago. I'm going to guess like 2017 or something like that. And I stopped using it because it was too damn hard. I didn't notice, honestly didn't notice any difference tonally from using it. I don't know that I would notice a difference though, because I do so many different things with guitars. I don't build all my guitars the same and just vary the wood. So it's hard for me to say. I'm changing things all the time. I'm not running a controlled experiment here. So I haven't noticed anything except that it's hard as hell and just miserable to work with because it's just too dense. Like it's pretty rough working with the standard woods that luthiers use, like ebony and rosewood. Now, when you make it much, much, much harder than that still, it's really not a good time. So I've heard of some people using snake wood. They're nuts. I don't know why you would put yourself through that. Okay, LC Guitars writes, I add normally 2 coats of True Oil type finish to all my fretboards except raw maple. Before fretting, I always glue my frets with some fish glue, and the oil helps with cleanup. Once the frets are installed, I masking tape up the fretboard to do all of my level / crown / sand / polishing. After removing the tape, I clean the fretboard with some mineral spirits and then re-oil the fretboard. That sounds like a good process right there. This is because I did a video. I was talking about how I was using True Oil on my Wangi fretboard, not something I normally do. And I just wanted to try that out. And yeah, I do think it did help with glue cleanup. Now, when I don't use any oil on the board, I have to put some paste wax on the board before I wick some water-thin super glue into the fret slots to do the same thing. Basically, the wax is like a stand-in for having a finish on the board. But hey, you don't need to do that if you're already finishing the board anyway. And also the board just looks shiny and really sweet that way. Okay. I always found this ridiculous imperial system completely moronic. People talking thousands instead of single digits when you are dealing with the metric system. Who on earth can imagine 80 thousandths of an inch or 20 thousandths of an inch, but every person can imagine 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeters. Okay, sounds like more of a problem with you. I personally don't mind using thousandths of an inch or using millimeters. In fact, I use both. Jonah Guitar Guy writes, I've made many Wangi fretboards. Always treat them like any wood other than maple. Just use thinned boiled linseed oil or Stumax fretboard oil. I think the Wangi looks very nice with the True Oil, but if it wears from playing, it will take a little more effort to touch up than just re-oiling the whole fretboard. Good thing Fender owners think the ugly brown wear marks on their maple necks are a sign of coolness somehow. Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right. It sounds like a dig right there, but I know he's not. And actually, I was thinking the same thing. I think I mentioned that a little bit in the video too. That my one concern with the True Oil is if you wear through it at any point, whether it's from polishing the frets or literally just over time from playing it, then when you apply more True Oil over top of that, if you've already sanded through it all, there will be a witness line, so it won't be without consequence. It's not like it'll ever look like it did before, but in the context of a fretboard, I actually agree with what he's talking about with Fender owners thinking the ugly brown wear marks on their maple necks are a sign of coolness. In a sense, with the fretboard, a little bit of wear and kind of a dirty look to it works, right? I mean, it's kind of cool. Maybe not to some of you guys, but hey, that's what I'm going with. I mean, we'll see. I don't think it'll look bad if I sand through it, but or rub through it. But also, I probably won't rub through it. I did quite a good number of coats. Either way, I'm open to the process. We'll see what happens. We're all just having fun here. Yohef988 writes, where do you buy those Evo Gold fret wire? I already answered that, actually, from LMI. Nice to try Wengi for a fretboard. Next time, try to get a piece of snakewood, mainly grows in Suriname. Oh, that's funny. I was just making fun of snakewood. Actually, I didn't see this question. Disregard what I said about snakewood. I wasn't ripping on snakewood. So he goes on, here I am working on a snakewood fretboard. Snakewood is harder than ebony and has a beautiful bell-like tone. It has the most sustain I ever heard in woods. Sands easily up to a mirror shine. It is like it has some glass-like qualities. I am just a hobby builder for the last 20 years, but know my woods well. Okay, great. And he leaves a link there to his video, which obviously I'm not going to play here. But you guys could check that out if you want. And yeah, to what he's saying there, I have never used snakewood, so there you go. It sounds like it might be worth the suck. It might be worth it after all, but you know, there's one piece of anecdotal evidence that it's worth it. Okay. All right, I think that's good. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. I got to get going, actually. So this was fun, as usual. Can't wait to see you guys in the next one. I'm going to be doing some more videos on the parlor guitar, on guitar number 106, which is, you know, about ready to put a pick guard on it and ship it out to the owner. So that's exciting. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.